trying to secure, yeah, we're trying to secure all the various moving parts of this program. We are settled now, so apologies for the 10-minute late start. We will make good use of the time. So my name is Bernard Kokuavle. I'm a radio and TV journalist, and my job is to MC and moderate the program. And I still see a few empty seats in front. This program is actually streaming on Zoom. And there are more people online than in person. And I don't want them to think that the room is that empty. So if the seats in front of him are reserved, I really want to urge you to move forward so that we will have a much closer knit team. So as you can see, there are cameras in the room as well. So if you can just occupy any empty seat in front of you, it will be really, really nice. Or any empty table, because the room is looking a bit awkwardly empty to the left. So let's work on that. Also want to welcome all our participants on Zoom and YouTube. Thank you so much for joining the program. We're really grateful to have you on. We will do our best to incorporate your views in the discussions. A few quick announcements. This is a breakfast meeting. So if you just came in, you can help yourself to breakfast as the program proceeds. Generally, we tell our kids not to eat and work at the same time, but today we suspend that rule. I'm trying to implement that rule in my house. So for them to see me on YouTube with a group of adults eating and working is on way. So I have explanations to do. But we call this a working breakfast. So feel free to eat. I'm sure those of you who are used to this place know where to go for emergency exit, but I need to announce that again. Can I have your attention, please? This is very important. So there are 2 exits to the room. As you can obviously see, there's an exit to your right that sends you to the restrooms on the right. But there's another emergency exit on our left, which can be opened in case of a fire. The fire assembly point is in the car park, and there's an exit just to the right where the registration is, which can be opened. So if you hear the fire alarm, don't ask any question. Just go through the closest exit and meet at the car park. People will direct you. This is very important. So there are 2 exits, one emergency on your left, one on your right. The restrooms are on your right. If you have any question, any of our officials standing can help you. If you see anybody standing, apart from the cameramen, they work for us. The rest of us will sit. The program is in 2 parts. We're going to have a few important speeches to set the scene. Then we'll be walked through an important presentation that tries to distill the very large budget document into more digestible parts. For me, it's one of the highlights of the Deloitte economic dialogue, where they sift the wheat from the chaff so that we have a working document for the panel. Then, of course, we have a panel which is very rich and diverse. We have invited these people not because they know everything, but because we believe they represent key sectors of ideas. But you're also here to help us in the panel. So open the floor very early so we can hear your views as well. So please feel free to contribute to join the program. And all of this is streaming live on YouTube and on Zoom as well. So once again, thank you for coming for the program. I like to introduce, so I have different people I like. Of the big 4, my favorite country managing partner is the man I'm coming to call for many reasons. Now, I only saw him for the first time at the National Economic Dialogue. But for the past 3 or 4 years, he sends birthday requests to his staff to my show. And he always ends with, from your country managing partner, Daniel K. Owusu. It's amazing. So the fact that he knows everybody in the company's birthday, I don't know how he does that, and he sends it at the exact same time. That should tell you the kind of person he is. So yeah. So I'd like to bring him to do the proper welcome, set the scene for us. Then we'll hear from the highest ranking government official here. After that, we'll get into the report. So if you are happy, please put your hands together one more time for Daniel. Is it Kojo Owusu, our country managing partner, in whom we are well pleased.
Okay. Pana, thank you very much. Good morning. Oh, good morning. Honorable ministers, MPs, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, and honored participants. A warm welcome to the Deloitte Economic Dialogue, a forum where over the years we have provided insight into the economic direction for the year by having insightful conversation on the government monetary and fiscal policies. Following the 2025 budget statement read on Tuesday, 11th March 2025 on the theme, Resetting the Economy for the Ghana We Want. We are gathered here to discuss the implications of the policies on the individuals, on businesses, on the citizens of our dear nation. Before we begin, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all our invited speakers and panelists. Honorable Dr. Kesel Atuforsin, the budget discussion is supposed to be about now. We are hoping that he can pass in and step by. Honorable Seth Tepe, thank you for making the time to be with us. Dr. Richard Etuahen, I always listen to you on radio. You have some strong points. Thank you for making time. Professor Ajapoma, thank you for making time. You told me George is your son. Just get him to behave himself well in the office. Mr. Seth Chum Akwabwa, thank you for making time. Yaolate and George, thank you, invited guests and speakers. The forum has become a vital platform where thought leaders, the business community, and policymakers provide insight into the economic direction of the nation, as well as obtain feedback on key initiatives announced by the government and unpack what the economic future holds for Ghana. The theme for this year's Deloitte Economic Dialogue is Ghana's Economic Transformation Agenda, Key Consideration for Successful Reset. The Ghanaian economy has experienced significant challenges in recent years, and I cite just a few. High inflation levels, and if you recall, we peaked at about 54% in 2022. And since then, we have not been able to come back to the expected levels. There's high currency depreciation. And if you look at our economy, which is import dependent, we appear to be importing a lot of the inflation into our system. There's increasing levels of unemployment within the system. When you look at the university, if you go to any graduation ceremony, any year, you'll get frightened. Is this looking forward to become a risk for us? Because there are increasing numbers that are coming out, and where are the jobs for them to do? An increasing challenging business climate, and we have seen few companies shut shop in the past couple of years, citing challenges in the system. Some of them were very strong. They were very close to us, and we've seen them shut shop and leave the country. There's high debt levels, which resulted in a debt default of the IMF, which resulted in IMF provided extended credit facility to the country. With the new government, Ghanaians remain highly expectant of the impact of the government economic reset agenda on their lives. And that is why we are all here. Ladies and gentlemen, this morning's discussion aims to identify key considerations for a successful reset of the Ghanaian economy. We have seen flagship programs which have been put up by the government. And I will just cite few. The big push, 24-hour economy, rapid industrialization, accelerated export development program, agriculture for economic transformation agenda, among others. We have also seen the significant policy shift, cancellation for the Gold for Oil program, the introduction of the Ghana Gold Board. Someone will ask you, is it just a shifting cultivation, change of names? Removal of taxes, such as the e-levy, emission levy, VAT on motor vehicle, etc., has been celebrated. There are various expenditure rationalization strategies that we have seen the government also put up. Our objective is to provide the needed support and insight into the government in charting the path to restore physical and debt sustainability, implement bold but practical structural reforms, improve agriculture, drive industrialization, and get the country to produce what we eat, and improve overall investor confidence for both local and foreign investors. In conclusion, great minds discuss great ideas. Let us share ideas, experiences, and insights which are invaluable in shaping our collective understanding of the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead. That is why I urge you all, both present and online, to actively engage in the discussion ahead and make your concerns and contribution known. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for being here today. And let us commence this year's Deloitte Economic Dialogue with a shared commitment to driving Ghana's sustainable economic recovery and reset. Thank you, and God bless our homeland, Ghana. Thank you very much.
I think we can do better for our country managing partner, Daniel Kojo Owusu, who has officially opened the program. Thank you, sir, for this thought leadership platform. We're very grateful to you for bringing us together again. We'd like to hear briefly from Mr. Seth. You know, a lot of you don't know he's called Emmanuel Tekpe, but we will call him Seth Sinking Fun Tekpe. You know, a few things about him. So, you know, most of you may not have known, but he did a lot of work at the IRS, the then IRS, worked at the IMF before he became Deputy Finance Minister at the time to Dr. Dufour. He became Substantive Minister in Mohammed's first proper term. And then, no, actually, Mohammed's first proper term, 2013 to 2016, 2017. And now he's returned as the economic advisor to President John Dramani Mahama. And so he will come and give us a few words just from the government side, whether he's happy that we are here or not. And then the rest of the details of what he will say, we will hear during the panel discussion, which he has graciously agreed to be part of. So let's welcome Mr. Seth Emmanuel Tekpe for some brief welcome remarks. Please put your hands together one more time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernard. I have two challenges. The minister was invited to be here, and he might show up. So I have to be careful that when he shows up, he has something, something left to tell us. And then I'm also on the panel, I believe. And so, I've listened to the managing partner, but I also have to be, careful that I'm not, shooting, the gun from the hip, carelessly before, my turn. But let me just say that, Bernard, this can be a mini dialogue, so it continues after the main one, because now we've had the SONA. we had the outcome of the dialogue, which, as His Excellency mentioned, is to be, these thoughts were to be integrated into the budget with the Minister for Finance, telling us, the direction for the correction that has, to be made. So I would hope that the discussion will then address the issue of whether or not, these three major initial economic interventions, beginning with the president, eminent people, some of whom are here and some of whom will join me on the panel, industry, private sector, everybody is represented as they were represented. I'm encouraged by, the room being virtually full, and then at the time we are also, online. So the conversations of around policy and implementation, continues. But I like to do a bit of reflection, which I often do. I've done in a couple of places. Those of you who were in some would excuse me. The Fourth Republic followed ERP SAP. And that is, I think, one thing which we have to remember. 1983, or if you like, 83 to 1992, right? A whole decade of correction. That's what ERP SAP was about. One in this index actually suggests that we've been fairly successful. And that is because if you take growth pre-ERP SAP, you see a lot of oscillation, negative growth, positive, negative. I mean, some of you may have seen that graph that stretches back to the 70s and 80s. And then it became stable, about zero, at an average of some say 4.5, some say 4%, until we hit a sub 0.4, that's 2.6, old basis, new basis in 2013 or 2016, and then 2015, and another dip, was COVID around, 0.4, then we escaped, going into a decline negative again. We've been told in this budget that GDP has crossed $1 trillion, but that means that there was something positive about, however you be, of course, dominated by corrections led by the IMF, which we try to break with a homegrown policy, and I hope that we would continue. Sorry. Much of homegrown was synthesis of what we used to do, in the IMF programs, and you could see some of it in the use of the PRMA to stabilize the economy. Counter-cyclical economies will recognize fund. When the times are good, you build it up. When the times are bad, you take out, which is a stabilization fund. From the stabilization fund, if it is too getting too high, we cap it, and we use it to tackle one of the things which has dogged us for a very long time, which is debt. At which points I must remind us of our HIPIC, which was debt forgiveness, but with resources that flowed, into the budget for use, which saw construction boom in particular, adding to services, construction services, adding to financial services, and then later petroleum. At the very early stage of petroleum, services overtook a bit as the largest sector of the economy. And that's a reality, because the gap is widening with the destruction of cocoa farms and the rest. It's not likely that, agri will overtake services. HIPIC was a watershed in terms of debt forgiveness into the economy. We thought we would do a correction, but we defaulted. So it means debt is a sore point for us. And instead of forgiveness, there was some forgiveness, yes. And as I said at the recent forum, the chickens came home to roost, because under HIPIC, the taxpayers, foreigners, suffered the haircut for us. But they came home during the second round, and our domestics, including pensioners and the rest, suffered a haircut. Right. But there was an element of suspension also. Yeah, okay. But there was also the element of suspension, not forgiveness of the debt, for which we started paying. The new government had to start paying some of the suspended domestic, and we have 3 big humps, which we have to clear, find a way of clearing. Otherwise, we risk a default again. And then, like some countries I wouldn't want to name, the abyss may be too deep for us, to climb up. But this is the situation that faces us default. We are locked out of our own domestic market and locked out of the external market. Locked out in the sense that we cannot do 3-year bonds, we cannot do 5-year bonds, which we introduced in 2010 under Dr. Dufo, right? They were still under BOG, and then we put on the stock exchange, and the patronage was good. Patronage was so good, we were able to even do a $200 million US bond, right? Which was oversubscribed when we kept to at 6%, much lower than 10.2 external, sovereign bonds that we were issuing. And that's our version of the diaspora bond, because much of the money came from Ghanaians that were holding CD accounts for which they earn no interest. And so 6% was quite attractive compared to they not getting anything. This is the market which, has been destroyed. There's a foreign element to it. The other foreign element is at a point in time, I remember very well we got some statistics from the depository, which was again set up, and it showed, that about 60% of what we call domestic bonds were actually held by non-residents who had brought in dollars. So it means that the market was capable of generating our domestic bond market, some dollars which we could have used, domestic borrowing dollar for projects like Terminal 3, which is dollar-based and is the airport tax that is paying self-financing, or if you like, smart borrowing and all that. We learned to put money aside to pay off because we didn't want to repeat HIPIC. So that's I like to call it debt repayment accounts, just not to reinforce Bernard's seeking fund. We were quite successful. We used $550 million of our own, our own money, oil money, to actually pay off the first sovereign bond. We were paying only interest. By 2013, 2017, we would have had to cough $750. And then we refinanced $200 with the World Bank guaranteed bond, which today is also impaired. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm painting this picture to show, where we are. And I'm careful to use facts, so that it's not, we stick to a discussion of facts because we are here, as Ghanaians. Some of the companies taking place, they may be painful, and we have to get strategies, particularly for making sure that debt does not become a negative legacy for the country. And we find a way. The likely cost is another refinancing. How we do it, is still being discussed. His Excellency has said that that's one reason we must bring the oil companies back. For the simple reason, many of us are accountants here, cash flow. It simply means cash flow. Show that we have the cash flow, just as we did with Jubilee and with the projected Sankofa and Tenfield, to show that our debt repayment account will have sufficient funds for us to refinance the single spine and other, debt for which we were borrowing. So the cash flow, its purpose, with austerity, arrears, and the rest, is to show that we are capable of ring fencing that amount of money, to pay, to amortize principal and interest over a period of time. 10, we did a 10 soft amortization, 15 years with the World Bank bond. This is what we need to do to get this as back on track, to the external bond market. The positives and negatives of borrowing to facilitate growth is out there. We may discuss, But I hold a view that we cannot do any significant, infrastructure development, which is a solution to employment in a more sustainable manner, without going to the markets. But the thing is, if you borrow, you must learn to pay, which households and businesses do. Our business titans are here, and I believe many of them borrow. However high the interest rate they borrow, we need to bring it down. We need to bring down inflation, and the rest. So I hope I've given a background and given a picture of some of the trajectory going forward. And hopefully the minister will be here, to give you his own word. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for giving us that context. We are still here live at the Deloitte Economic Dialogue program, coming to you from the Mevivik Ambassador Hotel. We're grateful to you for joining us both in person and also on our Zoom platform and also on YouTube. We now want to launch the Deloitte Budget Analysis Report. And for that, I'd like to invite Gloria Boyd-Doku, who is our partner for tax and regulatory, to do that very noble exercise. So please put your hands together for Gloria to launch the budget analysis report.
Thank you, Bernard. Good morning, distinguished guests, ministers, esteemed clients, and colleagues. I am honored to be leading the launch of the Deloitte Budget Analysis, a product of rigorous analysis, collaboration, and a shared commitment to fostering economic transformation. This report is not just a document. It is a tool, it's not just a document, it's a tool for informed decision-making, a guide for policy discourse, and a foundation for sustainable economic strategies. The 2025 budget statement outlines government's economic and fiscal policies aimed at stabilizing the economy, revitalizing key aspects, and laying the foundation for a sustainable growth. At Deloitte, our purpose is to make an impact that matters. In that regard, we ensure our clients, the public, and society are abreast of economic happening and their effects on their businesses. We have therefore put together a publication that highlights the key aspects of the 2025 budget statement and Deloitte analysis of the outlook of Ghana's economic standings, where we are headed in resetting the economy and the key policies scheduled for implementation in the 2025 fiscal year. As we launch this report, let it not be the end of the conversation, but rather the beginning of a deeper engagement, strategic action, and collaborative effort that will drive sustainable economic growth. We encourage policymakers, businesses, citizens alike to engage with these findings and together work towards a thriving future. With pleasure, I declare the 2025 Deloitte Budget Analysis officially launched. We can access the document by scanning the QR code. Otherwise, it will be available on our website for download. Thank you very much for your audience, and I wish us a great discussion. Thank you.
Wow, beautifully done. Put your hands together one more time for her. I hope we're scanning the document. I always get intrigued about programs where like somebody has to declare something launched before it is launched. So the question is, if she doesn't say it is launched, wouldn't the thing scan? It's a very powerful thing. So if you don't declare it's not launched, it's very, I want to be like you one day. Just come and declare that it's launched. Or like a program. We can be at a program, then we'll say we want to invite the minister to come and declare the program launch. Meanwhile, we are in the program already. But if it doesn't declare it, we are not moving. Please, God, I want that power. So let's scan it because it will be good to follow as the next presentation comes on stream. And I think we need to commend the team for putting this very exhaustive work together. I think less than a week after the budget, right? Budget was read Tuesday, and today is Monday, and there's already a full colored report. Maybe you had Apple, we don't know, but where's Yao? When Yao comes, we'll know. But these things are very useful also to structure our interviews and our inquiries going forward. So I'd like to now bring up quickly partner for financial advisory, Yao Latte, to take us through the Deloitte report on the 2025 budget statement. A round of applause.
Thank you very much, Bernard. So good morning to you all. It's a pleasure to take you through the report. And usually what I do is to just bring it down to a level that you can understand, associate with, and at least take something home. Usually when you go into lecture halls and others, they say, what's the takeaway? When you walk home and your daughter asks you, you said you were attending an event today, what did you take away? You should be able to take something away. And so we try to break it down to something very simple for you to understand. So we go through the various sections of the presentation, of my presentation. So if the team puts up lightning. Yes, it will come up shortly. So whilst we're waiting for the team to do that, so the various aspects of my presentation will cover the economic analysis. We look at the trend over the last 3 or 4 years, the key macroeconomic indicators, what the trend has been, and where we are projecting to be next year. And then we look at some of the flagship programs that government intends to launch. And we will discuss some of the nitty-gritties of it at the panel section. But we have our views. If you look at our commentary on the budget, if you scan them, you see some of the commentary that we have. We have extensive commentary on some of these programs. We've seen how historically we've had challenges with some of the flagship programs that have been launched by government. And we have some recommendations about how we should implement some of these flagship programs in order to avoid the challenges we've had in the past. And then the last one is on the tax reforms, which is something that we all welcome. We are all excited about the tax reforms. Now, for each of the tax reforms that we are looking at, what are the implications for businesses? And to start with, I'll give you some example of highlights of what some economic reporters talk about. The Economic Intelligence Unit in Ghana places 4 key risks for Ghana in the next couple of months or in the next half of the year. The first one is that the risk that businesses are likely to incur more taxes or pay more taxes under the current regime. So if we don't avoid that risk or we don't manage that risk, it's a risk that will affect businesses and businesses will start relocating from Ghana to other countries. That's the first risk. The second risk is that the risk that GRE or Ghana Revenue Authority will swoop on businesses. So we've seen some tax audits on businesses. We expect that to be managed going forward because that has affected business operations. The third and the fourth one is the likelihood of terrorism, which they rate as very low or moderate because it's not likely to happen. And then the impact of elections on businesses going forward. And we think Yes.
Forget about this.
Okay, good. So I'll present for my screen, and then whilst the team gets that mine ready. So over the last couple of years, overall GDP in 2021 was 5.1%. In 2022, it reduced. Yes, okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So that's, so you can see overall GDP at 2021, impressive growth at 5.1%. In 2022, it tapered down to 3.8. And we know some of the risk in there. We had high exchange rates or depreciation of the local currency and a few other factors or variables that affected performance in that year. 2023, tapering down further to 3.1%. And 2024, 5.7, quite an impressive growth. But we are projecting to taper down to 4% in 2025. Maybe you need to explain that. Look at all the other variables that we have here. Inflation, a critical one. You can see inflation was at 54% in 2021. That affected the other variables. So you can see its impact on the other variables at GDP growth. Inflation tapered down to about 23.2%, 23.8%, and we are projecting at 11.9%. Hopefully, we should hit our single-digit target over the years. Our long-term inflation rate is 8 plus or minus 2. It's a long time we hit that, and we should be planning to hit that. Look at the movement in exchange rate. In 2023, the cedi to dollar was about a depreciation of 22.9%. 2024, 19.2%. To the other currencies, so on average, our major trading currencies, we are depreciating at more than 20%. That is significant depreciation. If you look at a lot of business that are doing business in USD or other foreign currency. This trajectory, I presented this somewhere, and they were worried at a country that is developing or low, middle income or low income, where we are now. The missing middle is industry. And then the rising economy or the rising aspect of the economy is agriculture. Why do we say that? Because agriculture requires people who have low skill and employ more people. So if we don't implement policies that support the growth in the agriculture sector and the industry sector, what we are doing is we are supporting services, but services only employing a few people at the expense of the masses. So we should be implementing policies that support agriculture and industry. But if you look at the growth, the service sector is expected to be the largest contributor to the economy, which require a lot more skill. So I like some of the policies that we have outlined by government, and we expect to see that through particularly supporting agriculture and industrialization agenda. Let's look at revenue performance in 2024. So in all our tax revenue targets, we exceeded our targets. So clap for the government. I know the business community, they won't clap. Do you know why? They are the ones who suffered. And that's the reality. So in terms of our tax performance, tax revenue, we did very well. Other revenue and grants, we underperformed. So what it means for business is that it's an economy that is heavily taxed. In a similar presentation I did to my West Africa colleagues, Nigeria is just about 60% or less than 50% tax revenue. Other revenue sources are there, and they are doing a lot of effort, putting a lot of effort on that. Our tax revenue target is 81%. That is a heavily taxed economy. We should try and diversify our revenue sources because relying heavily on tax is actually a risk. On the other hand, we are generating domestic revenue, but if we can diversify our revenue source and reduce our reliance on taxes, it will help. Now, in terms of expenditure, so we overspent on compensation, we overspent on grants and subsidies, and we overspent on capital expenditure. Capital expenditure, you can understand. It was an election year, so you understand that. But we underspent on goods and services, underspent on interest payments, and then there was underspent on social services or social benefits and expenditure. Going forward, what is the trend? 2025, we expect to spend 29% on compensation. Our total expenditure on compensation has increased. A few years ago, compensation was displaced by interest repayments before the debt restructuring. Now, after the debt restructuring, interest component has reduced a little from 29% to now 24%. We expect this to reduce going forward if we reduce our reliance on debt or borrowing. Then capital expenditure is about 12%, historically between 11 to 12%, and last year was about 13%. This year, we are projecting 12%. It's important because capital expenditure is what drives growth, and that's what increases your GDP base. Now, what has been the trend in our deficits? In 2021, our deficit was 11.5%. There was an overspend from 71 billion budgeted to 113 billion budgeted. In 2022, we budgeted to spend 96 billion. We ended up spending 172 billion. So our revenue was 172 billion. Our expenditure was 96 billion. 2023, we came close a bit. Our revenue was 158 and we spent 136. 2024, our revenue was 226 billion and we spent, or our expenditure was 226 billion. Our revenue was 186 billion. That is a good one. Look at the trend. We have reduced the deficit, or we are planning to reduce the deficit. Next year, Mr. Minister, if he's here, I'll challenge him to this. That next year, I want to stand here and say that the deficit was actually 1% instead of 3.1%. So we are always planning to overspend far in excess of our revenue. So you budget to spend more than we earn. We cannot continue on this trend, but the good thing is we have a Fiscal Responsibility Act that says that our budget deficit should be not more than 5%. So in the year 2025, we expect government to be within the fiscal responsibility threshold of 5%. If that happens, you clap for government. If that does not happen, we know what to tell government. Our public debt trend. Now, our debt stock in 2021 was 362 billion. That increased to 447 billion, further to 610 billion, 2023. And then 2024, we have it at 726 billion. Now, if you look at the difference or the breakdown, our external debt has been increasing historically. We have not gone to the Eurobond market in a long time, but our external debt is increasing. Why? In CD terms, when the local currency depreciates, your debt also increases. In 2022, our debt increased alone by 93 billion as a result of the depreciation of the local currency. So if your local currency depreciates and you have foreign debts denominated in foreign currency, you would have your debt stock increasing, even though you are not contracting external debt. So the external debt increase is largely as a result of the depreciation of local currency. And so if you want our debt management strategy, the first one we want to do is to manage our depreciation of local currency. If you manage that, we're able to manage our debt stock. But you can see debt to GDP ratio has been improving. So 78.5%, 72%, 68%, and 61%. Largely as a result of the debt restructuring in 2023 and 2024, our debt to GDP ratio reduced significantly because of the debt restructuring and some policies that were implemented at the time. Public debt GDP ratio, as you can see, the key drivers are consolidation of public finances, domestic debt exchange program, and external debt restructuring. So our external debt holders have taken haircuts, roughly between 20 to 30% haircuts. We did our domestic debt exchange and then consolidation of our debts or public debt financing. Now, our rating has improved a bit. We were almost junk status. Now, risk of default is there. As you can see, the RD or high risk or risk of default in some settings. So in all of this, there's some risk in the numbers. What it means is that our debt rating has not gotten to stable yet. We used to be stable, but now we are below stable. So it means that there's some risk in our numbers or even investing in Ghana bonds. What are some of the debt management strategies that government intends to implement? Government plans to implement a liability management program that improves overall debt mix and interest costs. Like I said, if you are contracting in USD, your interest payment is in USD or foreign currency, your principal repayment is in foreign currency, but your tax revenue is in Ghana cedi, that's an exposure in itself. So if you don't manage that mix, you will keep increasing, your debt will keep increasing, and you may never finish paying for it. The second point is government plans to re-enter the domestic bond market to issue bonds to extend the maturity profile. Yes, people will still subscribe to those bonds, but remember, because of what happened under debt exchange, government must give optimum assurances to people who are subscribing to those bonds that they will be repaid on time. That's something that we have to be mindful of. The next one is a sinking fund, and I'm happy the sinking fund money is here. We have to build that sinking fund to repay our debts, because in the absence of that sinking fund, we are only putting ourselves at risk of not being able to pay. In 2022, December, when we sent a message to our external bondholders that we are not going to pay or we are going to take a haircut, it affected a lot of people. I met some of the insurance providers in Botswana, and they said Ghana's bonds was one of their best investments ever. So the guy met me and said, "What happened to your bonds? We have been asked not to invest in Ghana bonds again." And so we want that story to change, because it was one of the best investments a lot of bondholders had. And so we want that story to change now, that if a lot of people are investing in government bonds, they have the assurances that the bonds will be repaid by government and on time. Flagship program, we will discuss this in detail. The big push agenda, about 10 billion or so, support 24-hour economy. We're operating a 24-hour economy, actually. So this program will be telecast live 24 hours. So you can go on YouTube, watch it all over. So that 24 hours has already started. Then no academic fee policy for the first year students. Yeah, so as they follow through from the free SHS, they also get no academic fee policy. We should have implemented this in some years ago. Bernard, when you and I were at Legon, you would have benefited. Agriculture for economic transformation, Women's Development Bank. My comment on these policies and programs. Sorry? Okay. Okay, please, let's put in a presentation mode. So my comment on this policy and program is that we have institutions that have been established to support the implementation of some of these programs. The reason why I believe some of the programs failed in the past is that we duplicated institutions. The Ministry of Trade and Industry is there, and then we established a secretariat for implementation of industrialization. That secretariat will have new resources, new people. By the time they get their act together, it's about 2 years gone. We have institutions that can support the implementation of this program. Let's use them. A Jumeirah program, Digital Jobs Initiative, National Employment Trust, Mahama Cares can best be implemented and facilitated by the National Health Insurance Scheme. They are an institution that's already established to support some of these programs. Then we have the National Apprenticeship Program. Yes, we have institutions that can help do that. Now, the last bit for the business community is the taxes. Now, it is one thing removing these taxes or reforming these taxes, is another thing making sure the business community benefits from it. So we have comments on the impact of all these taxes or tax initiatives. The first one is growth and sustainability levy, extended from 2025 to 2028. For the mining companies that are going to suffer this, if you have a stabilization clause, you are protected. But by mining companies who do not have stabilization clauses, this is going to have impact on their businesses. And so they will have to factor that into their projection. Increase in the growth and sustainability levy on mining companies from 1% to 3%. So it used to be 1%, now it's increased to 3%. What is the impact? Significant tax increase for mining companies. So if you're a mining company, you should budget this and you factor this into your projection for 2025. Government should assess the impact on mining operations and future investment in the sector. This is likely to affect investment in the sector. We did a study that looked at companies or countries where there have been investments in the mining and oil and gas sector and their tax rates. You realize that in Norway and Egypt, where they have lower tax rates or fiscal regimes, investment in oil and gas and mining increases. So let's look at the cost benefit of what we are doing in some of these sectors when we are increasing taxes. Removal of 1.5% withholding tax on proceeds from unprocessed gold by small-scale miners. In fact, this is a very good initiative. Why? Because for someone to pay this 1.5, they will do the illegal business. The unprocessed gold, they will not account for it, they will not declare it, and they are not even ready to be withholding tax agents. So we should allow them to operate or allow them to trade, and then when it gets to agencies that are authorized, we can tax them. So that's a very good one. GRA should, however, ensure small-scale miners fulfill their tax obligation for mining income. So we should not just leave them. Other tax obligations, we should ensure they implement them. Removal of emissions levy on industries and vehicles. So structures, there was a structure to implement them, but it was not operationalized. So it means that the thing that was hanging yet to be operationalized, we've abandoned it. It's not going to happen again. So emissions levy, the minister called Inwisie tax. So you are not going to see the Inwisie tax come into effect. Align the current tax-free chargeable income system ban, 490 per month, to new minimum rate of 590 per month. So widen the tax-free band. So a lot of people will benefit from that when we widen the tax-free band. People will have disposable income. Those days when they go for tripartite meeting, they say the take-home pay cannot even take you to 37. How can you take you home in Medina or Adenta? So if people's take-home pay cannot take them home, we cannot be taxing those take-home pay heavily because they cannot get home. Cancellation of 1.5 electronic transfer levy. This one you all clap for government. It has gone through a lot of discussions and debates. We are targeting a cashless economy. I've seen a lot of reports on this levy and has gotten adverse impact on our economy, particularly the IT sector. Some investment was supposed to have been in the sector. Those investors decided not to invest in the sector because of this electronic transfer levy. So the removal is a good one for us. Removal of 10% withholding tax on winnings from lottery. They said winnings, not betting tax. That's a debate, but it's the winnings. So the thing is that we are not just going to leave it. You have to declare those winnings in filing your returns. So business owners here, when you are filing your returns at the end of the year, don't just leave it here. Declare your winnings. When they said declare your winnings, I said our losses to those who have been betting. Manchester United, Real Madrid, their losses to, they will declare it. And then you factor that into your consideration. Extend application of 2% special import levy on general goods from 2024 to 2028. Well, the challenge we have with this is that the sunset provision, it was supposed to end in 2024. We have extended it. So businesses who are doing importation, please take that into consideration because it's not ending in 2024. We are going to continue paying to 2028. And what it also means is that maybe government is using this to support what we call our import substitution agenda. Some of the things that we are importing, which we can produce here, we should focus and import or manufacture them here as opposed to allowing people to import them. Remove VAT on motor vehicle insurance premium. Initiate consultation on VAT to achieve below objectives. So there are a number of reforms. Now, these reforms, there were so many taxes. Bernard and I were at a forum where he picked somebody's import duty on a vehicle the person has imported. There were about 20 or so taxes that a person has paid on one vehicle that the person was importing. Now, all these reforms are just to ensure that we bring or reduce the number of import charges that we are charging on vehicles and items we are importing. That creates a lot of distortion in the market. So just streamlining them really helps. Reduce the amount set aside in tax refund account from 6% to 4%. We expect this to support the reform that we are making. It is estimated that between 5 to 6 billion revenue will be lost if governments remove all the nuisance taxes. That's 6 to 7 billion or 5 to 6 billion loss of revenue. We have to get from somewhere. And the minister is confident that this policy of 6% to 4% will create some revenue that government will use to support the budget, including other initiatives that they announced. We introduced road tolls, another welcome initiative. Let's clap for government. Those who are in Kaswa will not clap because it also has impact on traffic. But the challenge with this is that it cannot be operationalized unless we bring the facilities back. The toll roads, all the facilities that were there have been destroyed. Others have been ransacked. So we are going to invest before we start excising this tax. It's not as straightforward as that. We are going to invest money to strengthen and then strengthen the legal and regulatory regime for tax revenue and then improve tax compliance through enhanced public education. So we should be doing more education. Now, Nelson Mandela has something to say that just success or just having money does not mean success. It's the freedom to decide how to make the money. That is success. We are under an IMF program. We don't have the freedom to decide on how to use our money. But we cannot continue to overspend and expect someone to fund our overspend. We have to put our money where our mouth is and be prudent in our expenditure. And the future is bright for us. Thank you very much.
Yao Apialate. Wow. Partner for financial advisory. I think we can go home. You've done a lot. You know, there are some people when they talk, you know, when they were school, they were sharks, you know, up a book. So he's trying the thing. Put your hands together for Yao again. Very, very nice, broad-based, objective overview. We'd like to announce that we are live on a few platforms. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Zoom. We're live on 24/7 television. We're streaming live as well. So your face is on internet. So you have to smile. Otherwise, they'll say this guy hasn't eaten. So I won't go bit. Be happy. You are live everywhere else. This is the Deloitte Economic Dialogue. We just went through a fascinating presentation by Yao Apialate, a nice segue into our panel conversation. So I'd like to quickly bring up the panel members, after which we jump straight in. So Seth Tekwe, where is he? I thought maybe Yao's presentation made you angry, so you already left. So our first panel member is Seth Tekwe, President's Economic Advisor. Wonderful. So please pick a comfortable seat and be comfortable there. We also have Dr. Etuahene, Richmond, right? We just got up for Dr. Etuahene. He's how should I even call him? I think he's a financial analyst with a banking tilt, because we usually interview him on banking issues, although he's pretty broad. Is that a good way of introducing you? Financial analyst with a banking interest, banking, yeah. We also have the AGI CEO, Seth Chumakwabwa. Let's put hands together for Seth. So AGI is the Association of Ghana Industries, and Seth is, you've been CEO for how long? Very long, eh? Since I started Form 1 in media. I'm in lower 6, you are still, you know, in media, we also have classes. I started Form 1 in 2004. I'm in lower 6, you are still, you're a big man. Speaking of Form 1, Professor Ejepoma Jekedako is a professor of economics at the University of Ghana Business School. I find that very troubling, because when we were in Legon, we didn't like the business school people because we call ourselves department. But the business school have put all our economists, Patrick Esuming, Ejepoma, and all the sharks are teaching the business school. I don't even understand why. And I was a bit surprised that, Daniel, you said she describes George as a son. Because he was my mate. George cannot be our son. No. I know. We're in the same economics class. So it's George, you are too old. You are maybe an uncle. You cannot be. Ejepoma is my age. Anyway, so Ejepoma, good to have you. It's always good to see you as well. Now, what we'll do is we have 2 of our key partners to join us. So Yao, you said a lot of things already. So you sit next to me. Then Yao Apialate. Then very importantly, our partner for tax, George Ankoma, he will set us off from the corner. So George, you will sit by Ejepoma, who claims. Now, this is a very, very interesting approach we are going to use. We have 6 panelists. We also have 6 thematic areas, but it's not one man, one thematic area. That's not how we planned it, but it's quite interesting. So we have general view on the budget. We'll do the tax and fiscal policy. We'll look at debt management briefly. We'll look at some government initiatives. We'll look at infrastructure, and then we'll look at external shocks. So 36. We have a lot of. And then we have a lot of you here too. So you need to pray for me to manage this well. So first round 1, I'm going to ask everybody to tell me their general overview of the budget. Okay, that one, just 1 minute. Even said you've done yours already, so I won't even give you that time. I'll take it from you. So George, just your general quick view. When you heard the minister on Tuesday and read through the budget, what are your general first-time thoughts? Budget, yes, sir.
Thank you, Bernard. So my general view of the budget, first, You see from the minister's reading of the budget that from tax perspective, it did provide a bit more of the promises that the government had made in the prior year, should it come to power. And so you see that some of the taxes that we deem as nuisance or unpopular taxes, the government tried to take these taxes off in the budget proposal. That is the first point that I will say as far as the budget is concerned. The second one is also to say that the budget statement seemed to give more from the beginning of what the budget statement was, give more incentive to individuals at the beginning. Businesses also have proposals that the government is looking at, but you see that the exemptions that are being given is going to individuals from the onset, and then subsequently, based on the reforms that the government has proposed, businesses will see the main impact subsequently after the review that the government has promised. So that's my general comment.
So they tilt more for us than to businesses, and they also tried. Very good. Prof, any thoughts, first-time thoughts when you heard the budget?
I think, in addition to what he said, I think that the budget sets a tone for macroeconomic stability. And I say that because over the years, much of the challenges that we've had as an economy has been the fiscal challenges that we have been experiencing. And therefore, if you have a budget that would look at expenditure measures and a budget that would look at some revenue measures, then that budget is a budget that sets some tone for macroeconomic stability. Now, coming to a bit of the details in the budget, we look at the expenditure side, some of the measures that have been outlined, looking at the Financial Management Act and so forth, coming to the revenue side, the abolition of some key levies. In fact, when I heard that these levies were going to be abolished, I was quite taken aback, because I was wondering how the minister was going to make up for the shortfalls that we're going to be experiencing in these in our revenue, basket. But he demonstrated a nice way of, making up for the revenue shortfalls. Although I think that we have to be looking at a more sustainable way of making up for these shortfalls. You think about the tax refund accounts that is going to be used to make up for the shortfalls. And in my opinion, I think that that account in itself is a function of how much revenue we are going to be mobilizing. And so in times when we are unable to mobilize the right amount of revenue, it's going to be creating some gap here. So I'm thinking that, yes, it's an ingenious way of making up for it this year, but we need to look for more sustainable ways. Coming to our projections of fiscal deficit, that would mean of about 3.1% for 2025. I'm thinking that it's a huge consolidation that we need to be making, about 4.8% consolidation from last year. That's quite huge. That's quite ambitious. That's not to say that it's not going to be achievable. But if that's going to be achievable, then it means that we need to do something great on rationalizing our expenditures, sticking to what we have said that we are going to be doing. And then that would also depend on how fast we'll be able to reform our revenue measures to be able to achieve the fiscal deficit of about 3.1%. If I'm permitted to go on to inflation.
We're just taking your opening remarks. So
yes.
you're already...
Because I spoke about macroeconomic stability, okay. I wanted to just
continue.
Hit on the key macro variables. And then we are looking at inflation of about 11%, right from about 23.1%. Also quite ambitious, but achievable. And I think that if we have to do that, we have to look at measures that we can implement on non-food inflation. I leave us here for now.
Wonderful. Thank you. Put your hands together for her. Wonderful. Please, when you finish talking, put off your mic so we don't get feedback. So let me come to the AGI CEO. Set your opening thoughts on the budget.
Well, thank you very much. I think I associate myself with the speakers because we see the budget being a reflection of the recent challenges we have in the economy.
Okay.
The government trying to, I would say, reset the economy. The key parts of the challenges that most businesses have is when you don't have stability in the economy. So I agree with Rob that it is very, very important because you have control over your business, you need to employ where to get your materials and grow your funds and all that. But if the external factors which you don't have control are not favoring you, it can actually set you back a long way. And we see the budget trying to do that. You see government expenditure cutting down. You see effort to reduce the policy rate, and you've seen already the treasury rate coming down quite significantly, and interest rates we expect to follow suit. And so if we put all this together, we see effort to stabilize the economy. But in addition, I think there was a lot of touch on the taxes, and expected so because the businesses talked a lot about the taxes.
Yeah.
And it's important that, well, some of them, the government says, we will come back to you on it, the VAT structure, we've spoken a lot about it. Then the withdrawal of some of the taxes was also expected because government had promised to do so. And some of them were rightly so because we thought they were not helpful to the business community. So that is very important. Then I'm not surprised that there have been some interesting new thinking and initiatives which was presented here. And we think that these initiatives are well implemented, it will impact positively on the private sector. Our caution though is that we've always had very good ideas, brilliant, thinking, but implementation has always been a challenge. And why it is so, we cannot understand. So these are the things that I think for now.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let's come. Oh, put your hands together for him. Thank you. Dr. Etiahene, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think my first comment is by the extensive delivery by the minister. At least for the first time in my life in this country, of nearly 17 years, you have a minister who came extensively to talk about the debt overhang. All along, people will read the GDP, the growth, but what they don't tell us about the debt overhang. And I just admire the courage that he presented that budget. And I was so fascinated because I'm always fascinated by data, especially when he talked about we're going to pay about 150 billion over the next 4 years. Then we talk about corporate debt. And what actually shocked me, the first time I heard that, I've heard previously that the central bank was insolvent, but this minister actually came with the actual figures. And I believe anybody who speaks on data and facts, they are very fantastic. So my first impression was that in the long time of my life, that's the first budget I had, apart from the late Dr. Christy Botry, and maybe Byron. I've never seen people go into details because it is that it gives you informed position of your budget. Seriously. So I think it's a budget with debt overhang, trying to consolidate and force economic recovery after the last 5-6 years. So that is my observation about it. And I think I want to commend you for what I saw and what I heard.
I hope you are aware there's a former Minister of Finance sitting next to you. And you are sharing funds. You are even giving Kwesi Botry funds. Charlie, your life. If he says something small about that, oh, say Tekpe have tried. But they want try. There's a Tekpe. I will let you ignore him for this round. So round one, I'm ignoring the two because you've spoken already. So round two is, but I'll start round two with you. So I'm moving this way. Round two is on fiscal policy and taxation, but I think I'll take a quick comment from George first before I come to you. So George, I think what is clear in this budget is that the government has removed some nuisance taxes, okay? And he has come up with an interesting way of filling the shortfall. He will readjust the tax refund from 6 to 4%. And hopefully that money will cater for the amount we lose in about the 6 areas he's reducing the taxes. I want your commentary on that. Does it sit? Have you done some numbers? Will it work?
Okay. Thank you. So if you look at the tax refund account and the proposal that has been made, I think what the government is seeking to do is to say that the money that sits in the refund account that I'm reducing will then be available for government to use for other initiatives. Okay. But then the question that we need to ask ourselves is, how are refunds made? And you see that the refunds that per the budget, I think the minister did mention that about just 43% is what is being utilized. And that's the reason why he's proposed for the reduction of the refund account. But you notice that what goes into refunds are, one, an economy that has a lot of export to do. We are not exporting much. And so when it comes to refund, most of the refunds are as a result of VAT inputs that are incurred by businesses. So if you have an economy that is doing a lot and exporting, then you have their products are zero rated, and so they will have a lot of the inputs that they have to get refund from the government. This seems to be the case that we are not exporting a lot, and so the refunds are not, or the VAT inputs are not being incurred as expected. And so you will not then be able to pay. So the indication that only a portion of the refund account is being utilized may not necessarily mean that it was as a result of mismanagement or something else, but the fact that we are not doing a lot of export. Two, it also happens where we are investing a lot in capital assets. When businesses are investing in capital assets, they incur a lot of inputs, which would then mean that they have the opportunity to apply for the refunds. If investment are not going in, it means the amount that we are putting in the refund account, don't forget, is a percentage of tax revenue. So if, which was 6%. So if businesses are not investing in capital investments, then it means that less refunds are going to be made. That is the other aspect of the conversation. And so it's not just about getting additional money as far as the refund account is concerned to utilize for whatever purpose the government intends to. But it's about the fact that we are not doing a lot. Then there's also another sector, which is the petroleum sector. This sector too, you notice that most of the operators have been given what we call the VAT relief purchase order, we call it VIPs. And so all their subcontractors continue to incur VAT that they are supposed to claim. Before now, the government or the GRA used to pay refund to this sector, and you get that from the service provided within that sector. Now you are incurring this input VAT because you charge the VAT on your invoices. The petroleum companies will issue a VRPO, which is the VAT relief certificate, to you. And so you don't get the money to offset against your input tax. With that, you are accumulating the input tax, which in the past we apply for refund and then they get it. Now, per the rules, because these businesses, the oil service providers, are not exporting, then the conditions for refund is also being locked up here. They are not able to get a refund. They continue to get input tax being accumulated. And that is one of the reasons why the refund accounts seem not to be fully utilized. Okay, so that is another reason.
You made 3 big points on the refund account.
Yes.
I'd like to press you further generally on the tax policy, because in your second point in round 1, you said it seems to you as if the government is giving tax relief to individual consumers and trying to raise more taxes from companies, and you use the growth and sustainability levy for mining companies. What do you think the unintended consequence of that will be? Will businesses begin to say, government is giving people free pass by removing these consumer taxes, and is rather selectively increasing taxes on companies? Can you give me some quick overview of that?
Right. So when you look at the growth and sustainability levy, that's actually, if you look at it, that levy was supposed to actually end in 2025. Now, by the extension of it to 2028, will mean that mining companies where they are paying 1%, now they are supposed to pay 3%. It means they are going to incur additional costs. Now, the challenge even here is that it's making it difficult for businesses to plan. Because you look at the genesis of this levy, we started this early 2000 with National Reconstruction Levy. It's moved to National Fiscal Stabilization Levy. The Honorable Minister is here. Then it came to now Growth and Sustainability Levy. We have various industries. In fact, it's not just the mining company that is paying, other sectors. But for mining companies, they are paying this on their gross production. Okay. Now, the interesting part of it is that the projections by government as to whether government will be able to achieve this or not is something that needs to be relooked at, because you notice that the major mining companies have stability clauses in their agreement with the government. These agreements have also been approved by Parliament, which does not allow them to, or which does not require them to pay new taxes or levies. So how are you going to get these taxes from them? I believe there should be a lot of conversation around that. Then you look at it that as industry, are we on the same level where some people are paying and now you're asking them to pay 3%, whereas others are not paying?
All right.
And then also the certainty around our tax regime. Don't forget, we have the medium-term revenue strategy, which has also made certain, which the idea for that is that it's supposed to bring some certainty and also help businesses to plan. Now, this levy, which was supposed to end in 2025, has been extended to 2028. So businesses now have challenge to now go and remodel their business plan, add this additional cost into their budget. So it makes it very difficult for them to plan. And I see that depending on the discussion with the industry, achieving the expected revenue will be a bit of a challenge.
Thank you, sir. George, thank you so much. Now, George is the tax partner. Seth, I have 3 tax questions for you based on what has been said. The first one is the point he makes about whether the readjustment of the tax refund account from 6 to 4 will generate enough revenue to offset monies lost from removing the nuisance taxes. So that's question number 1. Question number 2, the issue of certainty of business environment in the adjustment of the growth and stability levy from 1 to 3, extending it from 25 to 28, and business planning. And within that is the whole conversation about you are giving consumers relief, but you are taking it from a company. People think the companies must bring the growth before you can share to the consumers. So is it not turning that thing on its head? Deal with those 2. Later on, I'll do a VAT round where I'll come to you on the VAT. So I want your 2 reactions to that. Thank you. Put it on.
Yeah, thank you very much. The tax refund account used to be this VAT refund account because of portals of the tax credits. That is, if a businessman pays VAT on input, VAT is a consumption. The business gets an input. Businessman will get set with the VAT payment and then the VAT charge. So, their purchases. Otherwise, what we call cascading of debts. Otherwise, the businessman will have to add the VAT to the cost. Because of the appearance of exporters, every VAT we do has a refund account. Because the VAT on sale is 0 for exports. And that's because we don't want to export our taxes to make it competitive. Good. Now, this was increased to 6% to cater for all the taxes.
Okay.
But there were other refunds, particularly the notable one being a gain for exports, the duty drawback. As if you paid import duty, raw materials, and didn't sell the commodity locally, but VAT is going to be, a tax on domestic expenditure to make it competitive. You got the import duty back, and that was also resulted, and you could even get excise before we don't want to. Now, what the minister was saying is that the 6% and the accumulation that's inside were not used for that purpose.
Okay.
The value, so the tax refund account was used for other purposes. There were still refunds that were going to be made. So until we rationalize the tax review, he's saying we're not going to continue to. So he's leaving 4%, to settle arrears and then move forward. Recall that if you rationalize well, despite everything, all the taxes, a tax GDP ratio is still by percent. If you increase the tax GDP, ratio, in fact, 6% may be higher. 4% means more revenue. It's a percentage of tax collection. So the 4% with the responding tax base will still have enough funds. And it is for refunds, and it is insufficient as we enhance, the tax ratio, then it could be, increase to cater for. And mind you, if we want to also expand the tax base, as we often say, and the reason the US tax is attractive in terms of filing is because once somebody has PAYD and all of that, when they file, they get education and that ones, they get other grants and it often results in refunds. So if we want to encourage and expand the tax base, we should also expect that we should have a very solid credit and refund, mechanism.
Okay.
So that is all that. To have the students, and we have to some error. Fiscal stabilization or national stabilization, temporary import duty. These two taxes were actually used to augment austerity on the revenue side. So those of you who know history, anytime we went into an IMF program, were introduced as temporary taxes, and they went off once the IMF program was on. Now, the proliferation of taxes is interesting that when the VAT was introduced, the VAT actually replaced not just the sales and service taxes, but all other consumption taxes, levies, however they were called, including super sales tax and others. So what we are doing by the reintroduction of levies, is that we are going back and reintroducing, all those taxes which were replaced by the VAT, except for the two which ought to be temporary as a corrective measure, which itself may not be necessary if we stick to the stabilization fund as a counter-cyclical fund. One times are good, we build it up, and one times are bad, we reduce it. So the rationalization of the VAT is actually going back to see all these taxes should be replaced, by the VAT. Why? Because the tax to GDP ratio has not increased despite of the levies. And why has it not increased? VAT is calculated on VAT inclusive pricing. So all the levies are going back to add up as cost and making the VAT higher and encouraging evasion and avoidance. Right. Now, we don't rush such an exercise, and that is why the minister said, by mid-year review, we are going to have an IMF mission, which is actually the institution that globalizes VAT, to come and review how VAT review, and then we'll look at how the increase in VAT would replace,
Okay.
whatever taxes.
So you are dealing with the VAT question, even though I haven't gone there. Yes. Because the second question I asked you had to do with the apparently giving consumers relief and rather taxing businesses, which I think is the point George made earlier. You haven't dealt with that.
Yes, I was coming to that. If you note, the relief is associated with the banks, the tax banks.
The tax what?
The
Band.
yeah,
Okay, sorry, band. Yeah.
Our tax rates have 5%.
Yes.
0.
Yes.
Now, if you don't adjust the income in the middle, you have what you call, sorry to use that, what you call a tax creep. That is because if you don't adjust it, the income, you are not adjusting it to inflation. And therefore, if you got a salary increase, it will be taxed. Yeah, income in real terms, would be as if they are not suffering from inflation, they are not suffering from other. So that is what is being the primary one that is being targeted. At the same time, we also adjust the level of income that is exempt, right? To adjust it for inflation. And then the target is the target ought to be adjusted also for inflation. So that is the
Okay. So because we have 6 panel members, I need to be very judicious with the time. So I'm sort of jumping through. Forgive me. Seth, you are AGI. Are you concerned or happy with the tax reliefs overall? I think the preamble George said is an interesting preamble that some companies will pay whilst individuals benefit from the tax reliefs, I think temporarily at least. Any thoughts from AGI on the overall effect of the tax policies?
Well, I think we are happy that some of the taxes are being withdrawn for government promised it. Look at the input we make into the budget, we also make proposals on some of those taxes. So we are happy that they are being withdrawn. We all know the bad situation, so they are going to tackle it. It's one of the major inputs we made, and we hope that it will come sooner than later. Well, now I hear Mr. Setepe saying the IMF will come middle of the year. So it means that by the time you really start, the year probably would have been gone. And we would have loved that, right at this stage, we would have had some review on it because it's really biting industries. The other aspect of the taxes that we have a bit of worry, we appreciate that whilst government is withdrawing some taxes, government revenue should also be worked at so that we actually reach or get the targets that we need under the IMF conditionalities. However, we've seen a trend on these sunset clauses, and as was mentioned, in 2013 we had a national stabilization levy. It was there for so long. Around 2022, the nomenclature changed. It became the Growth and Sustainability Levy. Sunset clause was put there. By 2025, it will go. 2025, it hasn't gone. Now we are extending to 2028. The import levy, same, 2013, way back. And it's stayed up to today. So the question is, when there is sunset clause on any tax, it means that there's a particular purpose for it. And therefore, by the time you say you are ending it, end it. Even if you come with something else, we will look at it together. But when we have a sunset clause and the sun never set, and every time it's going on and on, that is a bit of a problem. And I think that has to be looked at. But generally speaking, I think we are happy with the withdrawals that have come in. Business are prepared, but you see, the challenge we've had is the multiplicity of the taxes. The other day I showed a table of a typical import bill of even raw material, not finished products. And interestingly, when you look at the list of taxes you pay and the cumulative part of it, when you import a particular, I would say, raw material, the taxes you pay at the port at the time of clearing comes to about 57% of the value of the item you've imported. So you are virtually, being taxed out of, your blood. And that is not good enough for business because the businesses need the money to expand and have a multiplier effect on the economy. So we are happy that some taxes are being withdrawn, but I think there's a lot more discussions on the taxes going forward.
Please, if you are not on the floor, put your mic off so that the feedback reduces. Thank you very much. Now, I am moving within a lot of constraints. I am just on my second thematic area of fiscal policy. And even there, I'm just dealing with taxes. I haven't even come to monetary fiscal tensions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask, is there anybody on the panel who wants to make a point about the tax reliefs versus how to get the money back, or the tension between the business and individual taxation? If not, I can move to the next round. No, said I don't want you to. You want to make a tax?
Very quick one.
Oh my God.
You see, the point is,
Okay.
we have major taxes and minor taxes. That is the essence of the tax rationalization. Your major taxes are income tax, general, for anybody who earns income, profits, employment, or whatever. Your major expenditure tax supposed to be VAT. You consume, you pay, unless, of course, there are exemptions for, some very solid regions. Then you have your excise duty, which is also major, but which is the same tax, and it affects only specific commodities, petroleum, alcohol, tobacco, and others. That's environmental. And then the final one is the import duty, which is protective. Now, no matter the number of levies you introduce, right, you are only mimicking any of these four. Temporary import duty is mimicking import duty, right? COVID levy is either on imports or on, consumption and duplicating. So I think what we have to avoid, is besides the use of levies to do correction and then goes away, I think we should be worried because these four taxes actually give you 85% of your revenue. And if you increase them and the cost, and they go into the cost of production, that is what hurts industry. Because then you are multiplying the taxes which cannot be refunded like VAT.
All right.
And the businessman would have to add them. So
All right.
I think we should stick to the core taxes and be wary of introducing levies at random.
Wonderful. Doc, a quick point on taxes.
Thank you very much. Bernard, my not concern, at times when we are looking at these taxes, we don't take it holistically. And I'm going to give you figures. Between 2014 and 2022, gold produced and exported was $46 billion. And you're shocked to know that 85%, 85.2% went out. It was only 14.8%, 6.2. I begin to ask myself, if the Minister of Finance sees that it's only 14%, and there is a need for us to generate and put the mining sector extra 2%, I find it unbelievable. Because if you travel to, if you ask Yalete, if you travel to Botswana, go and look at the diamond taxes and the way they have managed to increase it from the low 14% to as far back as 30, now it's nearly 40%. Why do we have 14% for extraction? So let us be very holistic and use data. You spotted 46 billion. You took 36 billion, 85 billion. So if the minister is saying that in times of this, in times like this, I'm just adding 2% for the next 2-3 years I think we should be able to understand that we are not in normal times. We are not in normal times. Because if you had the budget and you see the things that were going on, I begin to ask myself, where is this man going to get money to run the economy? And gold today, those of you don't know, gold is $3,000 per ounce today. Let us put it 2.5. Last year, let me give you last year. According to Bank of Ghana data, Ghana produced and exported 11 billion worth of gold for 1 year. Do you know how much goes to the Bank of Ghana central account? You have a shock of your life. So please, let us not be too much emotional about these things, because in other jurisdictions, and I use Botswana, I've always been to Botswana, The diamond is for 14%. Today, it is 40%. And by 2030, it's going to 50%. Anglo DBA, whether you take the diamond or not, you can go.
Wonderful. So you agree with the adjustment from 1 to 3. Wonderful. My last question on the fiscal round has to do with something that came out during the National Economic Forum. And Japoma, you were there, where people were saying there seems to be a lack of coordination between monetary and fiscal. Okay. An example of that could be on that panel. I remember the governor say, I remember the Minister of Finance say, wow, we've brought T-bill deals rate down from 28 to 17%. It's great, coming down. Then when the governor came, he says, well, it's good, but if it keeps coming down too quickly, it can have an effect on the exchange rate because people will move money away from T-bills into FX. And then it's sort of, I got the finance minister back. And so my point is that all these things are very nice, but if you don't coordinate the two legs of that economic management, what are your thoughts around that? Does the budget indicate that coordination between the fiscal and monetary side on consolidation, and because you said the budget is going to stabilize, right? Do you get the sense that from the initiatives in this budget, it moves in tandem with what the monetary authorities may also want to do as a fallout of that committee that you were part of? Mike.
Okay.
Yes, it's on. It's on.
So I see the eagerness that the Minister of Finance has to kind of reduce our borrowing and to make sure that we are on a sustainable path. But like you rightly said, we need to get to a point where we see that clear coordination between the fiscal and the monetary side. So you take, for example, the reduction or the abolition of the levies that we have, especially on the individual side or on the consumer side. That, even though I think it's not going to be significant, might lead to some injections into the economy in terms of liquidity. And that, if care is not taken, might put a lot of pressure on the central bank to also increase their monetary policy rate, which may not necessarily be so favorable to the business environment. So, and again, if you look at the fiscal consolidation that we are trying to do, again, the abolition of these levies, if we are not careful, it may have repercussions for the exchange rate as well. And so there is a clear need for the Minister of Finance to stick to the fiscal consolidation that he wants to be doing, in order not to put a lot of pressure on the monetary side to try to quench the fire. Because over the years, we've not seen like a clear coordination between the fiscal side and the monetary side. And because of that, a lot of problems are put on the central bank because they try to quench the fire. People think that they have to be doing better in terms of the monetary policy rates. Businesses are not happy with them, but then the problem would be resting on the side of the fiscal. So as much as we need to come up with all of these measures, reduce our borrowing, etc., it is important for the Ministry of Finance to work in tandem with the monetary side to make sure the coordination restores us to the stability that we want to be restored to.
Wonderful. So now we are on our third point, which is debt management. And your answer moves us there. Listening to the budget, I think there are two key issues. The government basically is hoping to reopen the domestic bond market at some point. As you rightly said, they also want to lower the key rates. And then they want to reduce public debt to sustainable levels, which is all well and good. What is your view on government's overall debt management strategy as outlined by the finance minister? So I'm staying with you. Yeah. What's the government's overall, your view on the minister's overall approach to debt management? Does it make sense? Will it work?
So I'm looking at us trying to finance about 35% of our deficits on the external markets and the remaining on the domestic market. And I'm thinking if we're going to be doing this with the multilateral agencies, etc., that wouldn't be a bad idea. except that if we have to go to the ICM, which I think that we shouldn't be rushing to get there now because it's a major source of our problems, like Yaolate showed when he was doing his presentation. And so raising some funds from the external market, I think, is not a bad idea if we are going to the multilateral side. Coming to the domestic side as well, raising about 65% from the domestic side. Again, we should be mindful of the fact that it's going to be crowding out the private sector. I think that the Minister of Finance is trying to bring down the borrowing, but if we want to go ahead and go to the domestic market, it would mean that we would have to give great incentives to local investors to be able to purchase, the local bonds and then the treasury bills, and that would hike the rates in any way and defeat the purpose for which we also set out to, bring down our borrowing. And so we should be very careful about that. Now, coming to the fact that we have to reduce our fiscal deficits to about 3.1%, I think, like I said in my earlier submission, that is very ambitious. We are going to have to make sure that the revenue measures that we have put in place actually kick in immediately. But here we are waiting for an IMF review before some of the things can be done. And so I think that the aggression with which we would want to tackle our fiscal issues is what actually is going to be determining whether we are going to be achieving what we want to achieve or we may not even be able to achieve.
Wonderful, thank you. Let me come to Yaolate. Still on debt. What are your general thoughts on government's debt management strategy? Number two, I heard the minister say on, for example, when he was uncapping the GET fund, he said, oh, there's a Dachi bond which has encumbered the people who are in the educational sector. We are going to absorb that as part of our strategy so that they will have more access to funds at the educational level to finance first HS. How do you see such things? Because you want to free up government debt, and now you are absorbing that into your own, because that is an GET fund, yes, right? So I just want your overall thoughts on the debt management strategy and what risks there are in which he needs to be aware of.
Okay, just to answer your last question that you asked, one of the maybe common debt management strategies to outline your cash flows or debt repayment cash flows with the sources of funding that you have. So this Dachi fund that you are talking about or you mentioned, at the time of inception, there was an alignment of some cash flows or revenues to support the repayment of that. So when you absorb it, what are you saying? Those institutions that you are moving them to, do they have enough cash flows to settle them or to finance them? And the other thing is the sinking fund. If you build enough buffer in our sinking fund, you will be able to retire our debt as and when they fall due. One of the problems or challenges that we've had, which will affect our debt rating or credit rating as a country, was when we sent a message to our external bondholders and even domestic bondholders that we are unable to repay our debt. That is a function of the fact that you have not built enough buffer to repay your external debt. And I'm happy that government has started repaying our external debt, because if we mismatch the cash flows, we do not build enough sinking fund to repay our debt, you will get into those challenges. Then I'll go to the overall debt management strategy of government. I think at the vetting, the minister mentioned that they're going to establish an independent debt management committee. That is a very good idea. What I would advise government to do is that we should allow that committee to work independently without government influencing their performance or what they do, especially in election year. Otherwise, it will be counterproductive. In the first 2 years of the operation, they work independently. And then when it gets into election year or when government needs to borrow more, they will interfere in their performance. The last bit is to diversify our borrowing sources. We have historically relied on Euro bonds, which are commercial facilities and relatively more expensive. We should focus on concessionary facilities. Concessionary facilities that support development of infrastructure projects. You can go for a concessionary loan at about 3% or even less. In Southern Africa and most Southern African countries, they are getting a lot of facilities for what we call blended financing. Blended financing is a combination of public finance and philanthropic funds. There are philanthropic funds that are available to support green projects. So if we do not go for innovative financing sources, you will focus on the traditional either Eurobond, we are going to the domestic debt market, or we are doing the T-bills. Those traditional sources have not been helpful. Let's look at some innovative financing, which I said, concessionary loan facility. A very good example is our long-term programs or social infrastructure program. For instance, free SHS. If we outline or we properly structure our free SHS well, you get concessionary loan financing from our international partners. When we introduced the Ghana Cares program, the idea was for international partners to partner with us to implement those programs. So if we are looking at innovative ways of financing our projects, even through PPPs, government will not be borrowing. Third parties or investors will be putting financing in projects that government cannot finance itself. Because government cannot fund all the infrastructure projects that we are thinking about. The infrastructure deficit that we are talking about, Africa Development Bank puts at 170 billion for the entire continent. The entire continent of Africa is 3 trillion. And so that 170 billion that we are looking at, one country cannot even finance. The same thing for Ghana. So our income sources should be diversified. Our borrowing sources should be diversified. The traditional borrowing from the markets is counterproductive, and it crowds out the private sector from getting the loanable funds they need.
Thank you. Let me take Dr. Tuahene on debt management overall. What are your thoughts?
To start with, I think when he said an independent body, I also sat down and said, if he can only do that. And let me share this experience with you. Yao has just spoken. There is a country in Africa, not far from here, Ethiopia. Ethiopia, Yao will bear me out. Ethiopia has leveraged on inward remittances for 2 years, underwritten by JP Morgan, to build a dam costing 3.6 billion within 2 years. If I'm lying, Yao here. So we should be very innovative. We as a country, if you take Nigeria, inward remittances, the next is Ghana. The next is Ghana. And according to the governor who left, last year, we expected to have received 6 billion. Ethiopia hasn't got the numbers, but I can assure you, they just commissioned the dam last week. 3.6 billion. Innovative financing, leveraging on remittances or using diaspora bonds underwritten by JP Morgan. And we have it from, let me tell you, we have had remittances. My record shows me from 2014. It is the biggest than cocoa and gold. But we cannot see any infrastructural development. So let the minister be more innovative, like I was saying. Very innovative, because if you like, you can travel to Ethiopia. Yao is there. He will take you there, and they will sit down to help you to restructure the remittances so that you can build the bad roads, no roads in Ghana, no dual carriage, and we talk big. So please, let us be more innovative.
Okay.
And I've given you one clue. This one, free advice.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, please, you answer for the panel. Just a round of applause for the panel. Look, it was always going to be ambitious to go through all the 6 thematic areas. So that's not the point. But I want to do a last round. That last round is basically on which government initiative what do you make of the government initiatives? There are many, right? Big push, 24-hour economy briefly mentioned, different things were said. So I'll give each of you like a minute and a half to talk to me about which government initiative you see in the budget is good or problematic, depending on the way you see it. I mean, I've read articles where I think you outlined about a lot of them. All right. So I'll start with George. Which of the initiatives require commentary or are encouraging or are concerning, depending on where you sit?
Right. So I'll first start with the proposed reforms for the VAT and levies.
Yeah.
I think that this is something that industry is in high expectation. And so we all look forward to the government ensuring that these reforms come up as quickly as possible. But if you look at the proposals made, that is the area that business is going to get a lot of impact because of the fact that the levies have been a significant cost to businesses over the years. And so by the proposal of consolidating the levies into the VAT system to qualify for input-output and the removal of the COVID levy, I think that this is something that, if it is done, business and this year's budget is one of the budgets that I would say have been exceptional in the sense that it's one budget that did not really introduce any new taxes compared to some other years in the past. And the fact that the only thing you see is the extension of sunset clause in some of the levies that we have. And so the need for government to engage the business community to ensure that this proposal comes to life. I think businesses are in a very high expectation and look forward to that. Also, we believe that the proposal for the VAT refund, reduction of the VAT refund itself, for me, is not much of an issue because the reduction from 6 to 4 is a matter of a percentage of revenue. So if our revenue numbers are high, as proposed in terms of tax revenue for this year, then we should be able to still pay VAT refunds. And so businesses are not looking at with the reduction, meaning that they will not be able to get refund. I think what we need is a bit more efficiency with regards to VAT refund process, and the fact that if government can, or the GRA can put in a special refund unit to ensure that refund processes are done speedily than it is now. I believe that business will be happy.
Ejefoma, any thoughts, initiatives that catch your attention?
I think the initiative on industrialization is what has caught my attention in here, and then the 24-hour economy. Taking industrialization, I'm thinking of us as a country having both a comparative and competitive advantage in agro-processing and some other light manufacturing industries. And so if we are able to do this very well, I think it would resolve some of our exchange rate problems and our inflationary pressures that we see in our economy. Coming to the 24-hour economy as well, I think that is also a good one. But of course, we need some basic things to be in place before that can work out very well. We need to make sure that we are secured. So security is something that is very important. Our transport network, we need to build on that just to make sure that people can travel at night, from one place to another. And we need other forms of infrastructure, good road, electricity especially as well, to make sure that the 24-hour economy works as it's supposed to be working. So these two, I think if we were able to do them, industrialization, focusing on agro-processing and some light manufacturing industries, would be useful for our job creation agenda, for our import substitution, export promotion strategy, and resolve our problems for us.
Thank you, Prof. Let's go to AGI, Seth.
Well, thank you very much. I think you can imagine I will talk similar to what she said. No, there are two key policies I would like to combine here: the 24-hour economy and then the agricultural transformation agenda. Correct. The 24-hour economy, because initially when it was mentioned, there was a bit of confusion as to how the form it was going to take. But we've had the opportunity of engaging the government advisor on the 24-hour economy. And we like the concept that they've put in place now, the structure of it. And it is that they are going to look at the value chains. So they are going to work with us on selected products that we should be targeting and look at the value chains of those products. So the production that is from the farm gate to the logistics to processing centers. And then when you process you export or you take them to the local market. So if you look at the entire chain, it has to do with agriculture and industrialization, and the linkage between the two is very fantastic. So we think that the 24-hour economy is key as far as the concept is defined this way. What is going to make it work is giving all the attention to it, the resources to make it work, bringing the stakeholders together, and making sure that that linkage that we are talking of is well established. We had the 1D, 1F, which had similar concepts because that one was targeting at district industrialization development. The key challenge we saw was that the raw material to feed industry was not that well organized. So having regular, reliable, and consistent supply of raw materials to feed the factories was a challenge. And therefore, if under the 24-hour economy, we can resolve this particular nuance, then that would be great. Funding becomes a key element. And in most cases, if you rely the private sector source of funding to do this, because government can only facilitate. It's a private sector that is going to do this. And if you want the private sector to do this, then access to cheap funds and on medium to long-term basis become very important. And that's why the agricultural aspect and then the linkage to industry is key. And I think if you work it very well, it will help do the exports, reduce our importation bill, and then help the economy reset. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Etiahene, your thoughts on the government initiatives?
What quite interesting is not just what he said. The Fiscal Responsibility Act, which was suspended during the COVID time. I'm not only talking about the fiscal responsibility. The constitutional review is a statement that they should take it back. We should put a debt cap and a debt limit in our constitution so that people do not go behind and use the fiscal responsibility to create what we are experiencing. Because the fiscal responsibility was taken out. The IMF document 24/335/2224, it states that the government and the Minister of Finance should ensure that the fiscal responsibility is enhanced and reviewed. I will go a step further. Let the constitutional review put a debt cap and a debt limit so that people don't take us. In America, anytime you want to go to exceed, you go to Congress, and Congress has to approve. Not giving it to a minister or not giving it to one person. Because with this experience that we've had over the last 5 years, should never happen for the next century.
Wonderful. Seth, I will skip you and take Yao. Then I will take your reaction to some of the points that have to be clarified. So Yao, your views on the key government policies.
Yes, so maybe briefly, I'll say that slogans do not transform the lives of people. So we spoke about the golden age of business some time ago. Today, businesses are crying. We spoke about Ghana Beyond Aid. Today, we are under IMF.
All right.
And so today, we are talking about Nkong. If by Christmas time, we are so importing poultry, then we are failed. And what I would say to this is that the reason why these policies failed in the past is that we did not properly structure them. Have proper financing structure to support these policies. And I'll pick one or two examples. The first one is the Women's Bank. We have a development bank that has already started operations. We can leverage expertise of the development bank to write or build on the business or Women's Bank. We've had institutions like Maslow, which hasn't really performed or didn't really perform. And so the reason is we should not create these institutions as avenue for people to get jobs, but we should allow them to ride on existing institutions to build their work. The other thing is also the social policies. We should have proper financing structure for our policies and initiatives. We have free sanitary, Mahama cares, etc., etc.
All right.
If we are just giving this as freebies without proper financing, we'll go to the same cycle where a lot of freebies were handled to us, and then we had to use taxes to pay for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's take some comments from Mr. Tekpe because of the previous round. If you have any clarifications to make. After that, I'm going to open the floor for your comments. Thank you for your forbearance.
Okay, yes, sir. couple of quick points. Maybe just I'll restrict myself to 4. 1, Ghana is a lower middle income country. The implication is that we are going to lose concessional financing and we are going to lose grants. If you look at the table that was displayed, you couldn't even see the bar for grants. It started from 2010 when we became a middle income country. And yours truly in 2013 was the one who received the letter. It is very formal from the World Bank and from the IMF that we are, World Bank and African Development Bank, our own bank, that we had become a middle income country, and therefore we cannot borrow for 40 years as we did for the dam. We can borrow with 10 years moratorium. We can borrow for 25 years, with 5-year moratorium. If we get 2 additional oil fields and the services sector keeps expanding, in all probability, we will be an upper middle income country. Those resources will be shut to us. So in our planning, we need to recognize that building a domestic bond market and access to the external bond market is inevitable. Mention was made about Botswana and Ethiopia. Let me put them together. Botswana is AAA minus. The diaspora bond that was Ethiopia did recently, I mentioned that we, during the period of homegrown, were able to do 200 million on our domestic bond market, US dollars. It was actually oversubscribed, about $400 million, which is more than enough of the borrowing we did. That's domestic bonds in dollars. It's more than the amount we use for Terminal 3. It means that if we are nurtured the domestic bond market, at the point in time, I also mentioned that about 60% of the domestic bonds that were issuing were from non-residents who were bringing in forex. What we need to do is to have those dollar inflows classified as foreign debts so that we make provision for their repayment in the reserves. So that's a sort of pressure which the governor was talking about when he said if you accelerate certain policies, it will put pressure. Part of the exit and forex losses that occurred were because the residents, when they were exiting, we had to deplete our reserves, and we ended up, to pay them. So if we have a hybrid between domestic and forex and classify these so we can plan them and channel them towards self-financing projects, for example, which generate forex, we will be able, to pay. In any event, Terminal 3, the gas processing plants, the pipeline, port expansion, some of them are self-financing, and they are being paid. The loan is being paid for the forex that are generated from these projects. And we did this when we were in an IMF program. We didn't, because we have the assets, the debt reserve accounts that were flowing. So some of the initiatives are things which we initiated is about sustainability and sustaining the policy so that we were ahead of the Ethiopians and the Botswanas with respect to some of the policies. Now, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, if you listen to the minister, said we need a consolidated public financial management act. The Fiscal Responsibility Act is actually an extract from the Public Financial Management Act, which is why he said it was going to be integrated with the debt ceilings, probably quantified. What Botswana and others do is that they have a floor and a ceiling. We set it up informally, at 65 and 55, and that's what we're doing, which is why we went into 57 on a new basis in 2016. And let me link this to the fact that in 2016, we did zero financing. We didn't depend on the central bank to finance the deficit. It was because of measures like the Treasury Single Account and others. We need to just sustain these policies. If we continue with the TSA, with the debt, okay, let me come to, we would be able, government will be able to manage some of its liquidity. Of course, the law says that in terms of difficulty, you could go for 5%, right, of the prior year, revenue to augment. That's another type of ceiling, which Chahine was talking about. The thing is that we blew, many of these, quantitative measures. It's about consistency. And I do agree that maybe some of these powers, subject to the constitutional review, may go to the people's, house to be. The last thing, the biggest danger we have is that we take loans and they are interest only. So we keep paying interest and we think we are doing well. We don't amortize. This is the rationale for the sinking fund, which by the way is in the constitution. But it says the government may, maybe we've made it the government shall establish a debt repayment account, right? Then every government will be obliged to live within maybe the, the margins, and we will still have a very healthy, domestic, bond and external bond markets. If you borrow, you must learn to pay.
All right.
Right. And so that is
Thank you.
What I want.
Please put your hands together for the panel. We appreciate your time. Still stay. This is the Deloitte Budget Roundtable coming to you live from Beverly Ambassador Hotel. We have lots of viewers online as well. We have a very interesting group here. If you want to make a comment, you want to ask a question, please bring me 2 mics so I can take your comment. Kindly introduce yourself. Tell us where you're speaking from. Charles, I need help with the mics. And we'll take a few. All right. So yes. So we'll start with Mr. Bosombil, Petrosol, Dr. Yes. No, the man next to you. Then Doc. We also have a lot of you. We'll take about 3 or 4 before we go on. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll start with Yao. I want to suggest something that, when you did a presentation, debt to GDP ratio was declining. But that is nominal. It's not real because we had, stopped paying our debt. So why don't we introduce a nominal version in our analysis? Because it tends to always give us this flawed picture of progress, when in real sense, we are not making progress. And this has been historical. So what we should be doing is that on year-by-year basis, anytime we suspend our debt payments, we should look at what we should have been paying that year and factor that so that we have the real graph. Because that is how we get real. Because this nominal picture of our economic indices don't help us. And we need to change that, going forward. Then the issue of the sunset clauses to taxes that we introduce with the main objective being to stabilize the economy. As private sector players, we are always willing to support government, even though it is government that messes the economy up. But may I suggest that going forward, whenever we introduce such tax measures, we create a fund for that money and make the private sector get involved. Why am I saying? Even IMF, that gives the loan. It's not that they are contributing to solving the problem. They give you a loan that you pay back. They come to dictate every time. Honorable Secretary, you just indicated, regularly they come. And indeed, they will come to see how you spend the money. So my suggestion is that anytime we introduce these, tax handles targeted at stabilizing the economy, it should go into a fund that the private sector will be involved in the disbursement of that fund in stabilizing the economy.
All right.
Thank you.
So that was a CEO of Petrosol, Dr. Joseph Obeng Kuta.
Thank you very much. Please, I've heard that a chunk of the revenue that we generate from our taxes is being consumed by wages, compensations, and all that from the public expenditure. Now, I want to find out how policymakers have evaluated and benchmark productivity with this spending that we do. We've been talking about generating employment and all that. I believe that effective labor force should be able to regenerate employment. What are we doing? How do we dissect, see the essence of this spending? If you are not able to benchmark productivity with these wages, compensation, and emoluments that we do, then we are doomed. Because this will, it will continue, and they will demand wage increase and all that. Let's subject it to proper scrutiny and see value for money. Then also, we have been paying taxes and taxes. And when it comes that government is looking at the other side, beyond the taxes that we pay, and look at the non-tax dividends, people have a problem with that. And that's where the chunk of our resources are, the extractive industry. Whether it is growth and sustainability levy or otherwise, we should find a way to enhance on the non-tax dividends so that we can help grow the economy. Now, with the 24-hour economy, most of us, the trading community, are bracing ourselves for it.
Okay.
How are we going to be resourced? Because we want to diversify from trading to maybe export and manufacturing. And so we want, because I heard from the finance minister that the 24-hour economy will be spelled in details at Parliament and all that. I'm waiting for that. But for the VAT, we are waiting patiently for a better discussion without emotions, because we have a lot to discuss out there.
Okay.
That it shouldn't be that some technocrats will go and do it. Of course, VAT is a gold mine. If we have to structure it well. It is not well structured.
So you want to be involved in the
we want to be involved, and then the thresholds that they use to define the payment of VAT should be removed. If you want to ring fence some area that is not going to be affected with VAT, for instance, selling foodstuffs at the Makola, KJTR, and all that, we all know that we don't have to tax them. But in the same vicinity of trading, where we use benchmark to define who pays or who do not pay, where people come to the same market, it defeats that purpose, because then people have a choice.
Okay.
That they will go to the so-called tabletop and buy.
Okay. Thank you. You made three very important points because of others. Let me.
Thank you so much.
So I'll take Chinebo Akudi Sapon from the GASALG, Ghana Savings and Loans. Is that the organization's name? Please correct me. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Chinebo Akudi Boache, the CEO of the Savings and Loans Association. Thank you very much, and thank you for the insightful conversation. For us at the banking space, Doc, if inflation continues to drop and we achieve the 11%, then lending will be cheaper. And we will also be happy. And so it is one of the key things that we are looking up to, and we are actually in a position to support the government achieve this. The next thing has to do with the crowding out, which Prof. Japoma actually mentioned, that we have been speaking about over the years, that when governments come into the market and you crowd out businesses, it becomes difficult for us to even look at how we will support business. But fortunately, the savings and loans companies in Ghana now have resolved that they are focusing squarely on building MSMEs. And so we are in it together, and we are actually going to make sure that we live up to expectation. What we want to emphasize is that government should continue to look into our direction. Whenever government wants to roll out any program, you should remember that there are well-structured financial institutions that are ready to support roll out the government. So we stand ever ready to support businesses and also to government program. Thank you very much.
Now, luckily, this program is being streamed and recorded. So I take it that not all these are questions for you to answer, because otherwise we'll be here forever. So I want to take more comments. Then we'll aggregate the questions and you give your final thoughts. Is that a good idea? So let's take the next round. The man in blue. Then I'll go to the back. Madam, yes, please. You'll be in the next group. Yes, sir. I'll come to you as well. So let's make it brief, straight to the point, so we can get more people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernard. I have a very simple question to Mr. Setepe and that of Dr. Trian. My question is, can the BOG and the government achieve macro stability with the current negative capital position? My view will seem not to be seeing the urgency for the recapitalization of the Bank of Ghana. And I ask this question because once you have negative capital position, the bank will struggle to achieve price stability. Okay, and so with that, in addition to negative net wealth position of the Bank of Ghana, clearly you are going to have difficulty in achieving macroeconomic stability. So I just want to find out from the government advisor, Mr. Setepe, how they intend to achieve that.
All right, thank you. Madam, please send the mic to the back. Thank you. Did you mention your name? What's your name? Franklin. Thank you, Franklin.
Thank you very much. My name is Hannah Ejay Mensah, and I am an occupational health and safety professional. So I just want to make a comment and with regards to the 24-hour economy, because when Prof was saying and talking about resources that we need, she mentioned security. And I think what I want to say is also putting the employee at the center of the 24-hour economy. So the people who are actually executing, who are actually doing the work in terms of health, safety, and then security. And looking at their entire health. So talking about their physical health, but also their mental health. And then all other things that comes together to make that employee productive to be able to perform. And this also draws us then as a nation to making sure that we have an occupational health and safety bill, which has stayed in Parliament for a very long time. I know that some discussions have started on it, but it's been so long. When you look at people in the private sector, the informal sector, employees are being abused because really they don't have anything to protect them, though our constitution and then the labor law says something, but we need a comprehensive bill that addresses the health and safety of employees. And as I said, especially with their mental health and well-being.
Thank you so much, madam. The gentleman, yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Ransford Nilati.
Okay.
I have 3 questions for Mr. Tepe.
Nice.
The first question is in relation to the capital allowance base. Do you not think that it's high time we have a review in relation to the vehicle element? Because we all could remember that Act 896 came into being about 10 years ago. And in definition of what vehicle in relation to businesses, the cost base was actually capped at 75,000 Ghana cedis. Currently, the exchange rates in relation to the cedi is quite on the high. So having to have, let's say, vehicles that are purchased for business purposes being pegged at 75 Ghana cedis doesn't actually make sense. So I think we crave your indulgence to see how best we can have that reviewed. Secondly, in relation to withholding taxes, and also the various types of withholding taxes we have for businesses, looking at assets, works, and also services. The profitability assumptions that were made in arriving at these rates, do we not think it's high time that those assumptions be reviewed? And also, if possible, us having to increase the withholding tax threshold from 2,000 cedis, taking it a bit upward. Because I think now 2,000 cedis in relation to businesses does not actually meet that threshold that was actually assumed in 2015 when those assumptions were coming into
So
being.
you are saying 2,000 is too low?
It's too low, basically.
So if you go to like where, 20?
20,000 or something like that. And also for the vehicle, maybe if we could review it by 1,000 basis points to, let's say, 750,000 or upward. I think it makes a bit of sense. Yeah.
Capital, okay.
Yeah, capital. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more thoughts from the audience? So we are all happy. Okay, there's one here. Thank you. So I take it you are the last. Okay, wonderful.
My point is just a suggestion to increase our revenue. My name is Kofi Ewa, partner at Deloitte. Honorable Secretary, I think we've been talking about how do we generate more revenue, because it's something that we need as a country to grow. And we've always targeted tax, let's tax our people, let's tax our people. But there are other options. Indiscipline. And you can see that all around. Traffic offenses, pollution, and other related stuff. What are we doing as a government to implement some laws that would help spot fines and other related stuff and get money accounted? Not something that somebody would take and put in his pocket, something that we can account for, and it will increase the revenue that we generate. You can check Lagos State. Lagos State. It was something that during the then Fashola's regime was introduced, and the amount of money they generated, especially from traffic offenses, and the approach they adopted is that when you are fined, you go pay to the bank, you come back, you want to take your key, your car key from even the traffic officers. You have to go and produce your income tax certificate, which then means if you've been doing business and you've not been paying your taxes, they can reassess you and you go and pay. That increased tax compliance and at the same time generating other revenue for the government. So please, let's think about those options. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I will just read one virtual comment, a comment that came into the virtual audience, and then we'll see how to manage the responses. Question from Francis Amanyo. It's a rather long one. An analysis of the past 5 years indicates that government's primary balance has consistently reflected deficit positions, underscoring persistent fiscal challenges. Against this backdrop, the projection of a primary surplus of 1.5% of GDP by 2025 amid aspirations of greater fiscal stability appears overly ambitious. While the government's commitment to achieving a more sustainable fiscal position is commendable, the magnitude of the proposed adjustment raises concerns about feasibility, particularly given historical trends and structural constraints. This target may signal optimism, but could also risk credibility if underlying economic vulnerabilities such as revenue underperformance and expenditure rigidities are not decisively addressed. Achieving such an outcome would require not only exceptional policy discipline, but also robust economic tailwinds, which remain uncertain in the current global and domestic climate. So all this is just a premise. So now the question. What measures is government going to put in place to make the primary target achievable, considering the trends over the past 5 years? This sounds like some very serious guy who's watching the thing online. He didn't tell me who it's addressed to, but it looks like Setepe. Because this kind of thing, only you understand these kinds of things. So let me repeat the question, just the question. What measures is government going to put in place to make the primary target achievable, considering the trends over the past 5 years? Now, there's so many questions, and I don't think we have enough time to answer all. So answer this one and a few. Then I'll take everybody's closing comments. I hope that's a good plan. Otherwise, we'll stay here till tomorrow morning. So you will go first, deal with this one, and then a few others that came to you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. The deficit is revenue minus expenditure. I think we know that from our households for purposes of, when you talk about the way we calculate it is you take the cash inflow, cash outflow, revenue inflow, outflow, and then you calculate the first level of deficit because it doesn't take account of arrears. So you add the arrears, and then that gives you your fiscal balance. And that is the 5% which is in the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which in any event is, it was only not quantified in the PFMA. Now, that deficit is the fiscal balance. When you talk about primary balance, in calculating the expenditure, you leave out interest, you leave out arrears, and if you go further down, you leave out debt. That's why it is a more optimistic, figure, and it gives you positives quickly. The issue which some of us have always raised that we in Ghana should focus on the fiscal balance, and that is because our problem is arrears, huge. Our problem is that we pay only interest and we don't pay principal. So we should look at amortizing our debt, which is interest, plus principal. So these three elements, so that's the difference. The main difference in these three elements. And I think that for us to return to the market, you can't leave out your debt, the single fund and others, debt repayment, as we have been saying. So in answer to, I think it was giving a background and the optimism of using the primary balance, which some of us share, that our focus should be on the fiscal balance. The other reason is that the fiscal balance is what Parliament finances. It's not a primary balance because Parliament has to finance the deficit, which is that GRA could not bring in enough money, and then arrears, which we have to pay, for which we sometimes borrow, and then the net increase in debt, which is amortization.
Wonderful, thank you.
And now, if I may also, the issue of capital allowances withholding, we can link it to what I said earlier with respect to the banks exemption rate. I think we should, some countries index it to inflation. So all of this in a situation where the city is weak and you have inflation and the forex is also impacting, the real value of those allowances can be depleted, with inflation. So if you peg with inflation, we used to be very good at adjusting them annually. So I think that is what, we may. I think 24-hour economy link it to, the infrastructure strategy, of the then Ms. Mahama administration. We have a tendency of relying excessively, I would say, on the public sector to generate employment. But the simple example I gave is if you build infrastructure, Terminal 3, in all probability, is generating more jobs than Terminal 1 and 2 put together. Right? If you do gas processing plants, you create a new. So and this is where the borrowing comes in again, because the difference between GRA revenue and expenditure, if you add non-tax revenues, would not be enough for us to build such an infrastructure. And we may therefore have to borrow both domestically, externally. And that's why we need, a debt repayment account, a sinking fund, which is reconstruction, that works. I think I'll leave the
Thank you.
opportunity for others.
Dr. Tiahene, closing thoughts, reactions.
My closing thought is about, nobody talked about corruption. And it's the biggest, it's bigger than the Dr. What is his name? Yes, doctor said, it's bigger than the public sector wage. And it seems nobody seems to be aligned with it, or because we are all participating in it. Yes, and I believe that the president should come out and begin to change the OSP and let it be the EFCC of Nigeria. It has got a constitutional mandate. When it arrests you, it has no political color. Until we begin to do that, it is bigger than the public sector wage, and we'll not be able to address it. So that is my first comment. My last one is about, he asked me about the Bank of Ghana capital
Equity position.
equity. I won't throw my hands in the air, as somebody said. There is a need. I think Mr. Sektepe is here. I think he will carry it back. The reason is that it's about credibility issues and the independency of the central bank. Should the independence of the central bank be compromised, then there is a credibility. What I'm saying is that if 5 banks today go to Bank of Ghana and they say that we are short of funds, so give us lenders of last resort or emergency liquidity resort. Bank of Ghana has no money, and it won't be able to do it. It's as simple as that. All his treasury bills and bonds has been scrapped off. So I urge Mr. Sektepe to sit down again with the finance minister and begin to think how we can restructure, even if we add debt to debt, Mr. Sektepe. If you ask your people, the IMF, that you have told us to recapitalize, but you can't go to the physical space, let us maybe go structure something to improve, at least not the 3.5 billion, at least 1.5 billion for the next 1 year will be good. But we cannot leave it as it is. Because if the supervisor has got a negative balance, how is he going to supervise his children? And that is a very serious issue. And no, people don't take consideration of that. And don't forget, they have account with Bank of England. They have account with the Federal Reserve Bank. They have account with the European. If they see your central bank as yo-yo, you may not even have correspondent bank relationship. You may not.
Thank you. Let's take Mr. Setu Makwaba's closing thoughts.
Well, thank you. My closing remarks. I think that normally when we're coming out with policies, one major challenge we've seen is that we don't normally do what I call the regulatory impact assessment. So we introduce the policy, it start biting, then we have a challenge. And I think that this includes some of the taxes that we introduced. And I'll give you an example. 2 years ago, we introduced the sweetened beverage tax, and the carbonated drinks, they were already paying that tax on it. And our position was that, why don't you limit this tax to imported products? But government didn't listen. They put it on locally produced fruit juices as well. Today, Blue Sky is making losses. What they've done, they've gone to set up a plant in Benin. Meanwhile, Ghana was supplying all those markets. As we speak now, Ekunfi said they are being attracted to Nigeria. They are giving 7,000 hectares of land. It's given to them at the price of $150 per hectare for 50 years.
Wow.
And they will move if conditions don't improve. Meanwhile, we've introduced sugar tax on fruit juices that we are producing. That doesn't add any sugar. So if it's sugar that you want to keep, then why don't you introduce it on all other products? When we eat bread, when we eat biscuits, when you buy cocoa, don't you put sugar in it? Then charge on it as well. So the policies we come up with, I think that if we do long-term planning and impact analysis before we put it on, it will help a great deal. The other thing I want to mention is that some of the government initiatives, some of them are very good, brilliant initiatives, but let's always link it to the productive sector. Social interventions like free sanitary pads, that is okay. But how do we ensure that the sanitary pads are procured locally? And we have enough capacity, in fact, excess capacity to produce these products. So I think it should be added that whilst we are going to supply these school children with the free sanitary pads, any sourcing of that material or that product is done locally and all others as well. The last bit that we didn't talk much about here is about electricity. I know government has clearly indicated its intention to bring private sector participation, which is fine, because we know that about 25% of electricity produced is unaccounted for, and it's adding to the electricity bill. Today, we have a huge debt on the electricity. But what I heard the minister saying was that in the budget, that we would do automatic adjustments, and then we also do major tariff adjustments at getting to the end of the year. We know that automatic adjustment, we know the formula. There are some 3 key determinants. Depending on how the movement is, it may either improve or come down. Whatever it is, the solution to it is that let's ring fence that debt. Let's see how we treat it, but we cannot use tariff adjustment to resolve this problem. Already, we are uncompetitive when it comes to tariff levels. China, our major competitor in a lot of the products in the market, is doing about 4 cents per kilowatt hour. Even our bulk customers in Ghana are doing about 10 cents. If you add the rest, 12 cents plus. So if you're going to do major tariff adjustment and expecting that that is going to reset the debt, you have a big challenge. So maybe the presidential advisor will advise us how they are going to handle this. Private sector participation becomes important because of the inefficiencies. The inefficiencies, businesses cannot pay for it. It has to be somehow taken out and then dealt with. And I'm sure if you pull down on this 25% unrecoverable electricity that is sold out, is produced, it should help a great deal.
Thank you so much. Sir, let's take Professor Jafoma's closing thoughts.
So I would like to just quickly respond to Dr. Obeng, and then I give my closing remarks. So just to say that we can't, unfortunately, revise our wages down, the wages of labor down, but what we can do is to create a friendly environment for the private sector to champion the job creation agenda and reduce the wage bill for government. So this is what we have to be doing as a country. For my closing remarks, I think that we are very good at speaking as a country. We are good at putting policies down, but when it comes to implementation, we are not very good at implementing. I think we should take politics out of everything that we do and then try to look for a few firms that we can let them champion the strategies that we want to put in place to set the economy on the growth trajectory that we want to set it to. So thank you.
Put your hands together for the panel. George and Yao, I am taking your time because you are hosts. So host and win. So forgive me because of time. You've said a lot as well, so forgive me. Let's put our hands together as they take their seats again. Thank you, Honorable Setekpe. Thank you, Dr. Tuahene. Thank you, Ejefoma, as well as Setchuma Kwabwa, and of course our partners, George Ankuma, tax partner, Yao Apialate, our partner for financial advisory. And I'm going to quickly bring up a lady to do the vote of thanks, but we want to just acknowledge some of our the partners for the organization as well. So I'm sure you know Daniel Usu is the country managing partner, George is the tax and regulatory partner. I'll just go a quick round. Charlotte Forsen Abe is the partner for audit. Charlotte, where are you? Give us a wave. Thank you all the way at the back. Abena Baini is also a partner for audit. Where is Abena? Thank you. She will come up shortly. Put your hands together for Abena. Kofi Ewua is the partner for risk advisory. Kofi Ewua, thank you. Emmanuel Mate is the partner also for audit. Where is Mr. Mate? He's somewhere. Gloria Boydo, who came earlier, partner for tax and regulatory. Gloria, thank you very much. Yaolate, we already know, financial advisory. Kwabena Situ, assurance. Where is Kwabena? Assurance, all the way at the back. Thank you. Roland Tay, consulting. Where's Roland? It's in another meeting. Gideon Aio, tax and regulatory. Gideon, all the way at the back. Thank you. Sewa Atiasi Jogbenuku, consulting. Where is Sewa? In the system. And then Dorcas, is this Sekum? Did I get that right? Audit, Dorcas. All right. And of course, put your hands together for her. And of course, Benjamin Eshrifi, Winnie Hound, and Charles Yabua have been coordinating with me on this program as well. So where are they? Let them rise. So we give them a round of applause. So having done that, I'd like to now bring Abena Baini to do the closing remarks. She's the partner for audit. Abena, please come up stage. Please welcome her with a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard. Good afternoon. It's been an interesting dialogue and a very interesting conversation. And now I have the arduous task of capturing your attention and keeping it as I thank everybody. So let's do this. The economic advisor to President John Dramani Mahama, the Honorable Seth Tekpe, ministers and heads of government institutions, captains of industry, and members of the business community, the diplomatic corps present, distinguished panelists and speakers, representatives of financial institutions and regulatory bodies, members of academia, distinguished invited guests, the media, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Deloitte, I extend my heartfelt appreciation to all of you for your active participation and thought-provoking contributions in today's dialogue that has set the pace for all to support the country's economic transformation into an upper middle income status. Indeed, the theme, Ghana's economic transformation agenda, key considerations for successful reset, has come at a crucial time as we chart a path that positively impacts businesses, households, and the overall economy. Our discussion today reveals one crucial thing. The road to economic transformation demands a collective effort that supports the government's vision and combines it with private sector's innovation and an unwavering commitment from all key stakeholders to ensure that a sustainable and inclusive economic recovery is achievable. Special thanks and mention to the Presidential Advisor on the Economy, Honorable Sec Emmanuel Tekpe, for your insightful perspectives on the President's vision for economic transformation for Ghana. To our distinguished panelists, we are grateful for your time and for providing very rich talking points on policy priorities, fiscal discipline, and strategies required for sustainable growth. To you, the audience, both here in the room and online, thank you for your participation and for your continual interest, for being concerned, for being involved stakeholders. Ghana is for all of us, and Ghana's economic transformation and agenda requires not only sound economic stewardship, but also a united effort from all concerned key stakeholders and citizens. At Deloitte, we remain dedicated to facilitating impactful conversations and providing thought leadership to drive Ghana's economic revolution. We pray that this dialogue will be a catalyst for change and foster an enabling environment for businesses, investors, and citizens to thrive. God bless our homeland, Ghana. God bless us all. Thank you very much and good afternoon.
Charlie, this your vote of thanks is very precise. Wow. Like an audit. Even sound is even off. Let's put our now one more time. Thank you very much. So when you RSVP'd this event, you basically said you were going to come. But for us, it means there's rice and stew, very plenty. RSVP. So we have a lot of food in the veranda, in the balcony. Please get some food and come in and eat. The purpose of this is also to interact. So please stay within, have a good chat, send us feedback. I want to acknowledge our online guests. Let's put hands together for the online guests. They've been amazing. When you started, there were more of them than you guys here. And then we just gave them one question. We didn't try at all. But the good news is that this has been recorded. A lot of this will be sent to the ministry and the powers that be to hear. And please make sure you download this report, send us feedback. We're happy to engage with you throughout the year. Hopefully, we'll see you before the next budget, and hopefully the economy will be in a better position. My name is Bernard Avle. Thank you for coming. Have a fantastic afternoon. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.